The first warning came 3 standard galactic cycles before the actual arrival, a quantum-encrypted transmission that most diplomatic channels dismissed as an elaborate joke. When the Aryan Dominion's diplomatic vessel pierced Earth's atmosphere, it didn't arrive with the usual fanfare of interstellar negotiations. Instead, it burned a precise, controlled path through the stratosphere, leaving a trail of ionized particles that triggered every aerospace defense system on the planet. Dr. Elena Rodriguez watched the live feed from her research lab at the International Collaborative Engineering Complex in New São Paulo. Her augmented reality display flickered with incoming data streams, atmospheric composition, vessel trajectory, energy signatures that didn't match any known propulsion system. Something was different about this arrival. The vessel itself defied conventional design. Unlike the sleek, mathematically precise craft of most spacefaring civilizations, this ship looked like a living crystal, fractal patterns shifting and realigning with each microsecond of descent. Its exterior seemed to breathe, absorbing and redistributing atmospheric pressure in ways that would make most aerospace engineers weep with a mixture of terror and fascination. When it landed, the ground didn't shake. Instead, the Earth seemed to shimmer, as if reality itself was recalibrating around the alien presence. The chosen landing site was no accident. The United Global Engineering Conference, hosted in the most technologically advanced city on the planet, became an inadvertent stage for what would become humanity's most audacious challenge. Ambassador Krickstall emerged not through a traditional airlock, but by simply allowing a section of the crystalline hull to become translucent and then permeable. The being that stepped forward challenged every human conception of sentient life. Standing nearly 3 meters tall, Krickstall was less an individual and more a living network, a crystalline structure that seemed to pulse with computational energy, each facet containing what appeared to be entire libraries of information. The diplomatic protocols were brief and brutal. Humanity has been selected. Krickstall's communication came not as sound, but as a direct neural transmission that bypassed linguistic barriers, to attempt what no civilization has successfully accomplished. Behind the ambassador, holographic projections materialized, complex mathematical models, stellar cartography that showed regions of space so volatile they made neutron star clusters look like placid ponds. The Nexus Cluster, a region where the fundamental laws of physics seemed to break down, where previous exploration attempts had resulted in the complete annihilation of entire research missions. No civilization had ever successfully created a stellar bridge through this region. The computational models suggested it was mathematically impossible. The energy requirements alone would exceed the total output of most galactic civilizations. The gravitational instabilities would tear apart any known material. The quantum entanglement necessary for stable passage would require computational power that simply did not exist. Elena's prosthetic arm, a testament to her own history of solving impossible problems, began running independent calculations. The neural interface twitched, processing data faster than the holographic displays. Something about the presentation wasn't just a challenge. It was an invitation. The other conference attendees seemed frozen. Representatives from global engineering consortiums, heads of cutting-edge research institutions, military technology experts, all of them were processing the sheer audacity of the moment. This wasn't just another technological challenge. This was an existential test of human potential. Krickstall continued, the neural transmission carrying a subtext of clinical detachment. Your species has been selected not because you are the most advanced. You have been selected because you are the most unpredictable. The word hung in the collective consciousness like a challenge. Unpredictable. In the language of the Galactic Confederation, it was simultaneously an insult and the highest form of scientific curiosity. Elena's mind was already racing, not with the traditional scientific methodology of most researchers, but with the chaotic, interconnected thinking that had defined human innovation throughout history. She saw not the insurmountable obstacles, but the fascinating puzzle waiting to be decoded. The conference hall had fallen into a silence so profound that the quantum resonance of the ambassador's crystalline form seemed to be the only sound. Everyone was waiting for a response that would define humanity's place in the galactic community. And Elena Rodriguez was about to give them one. The global response came not from government agencies or traditional research institutions, but from the most unexpected corners of human innovation. Within hours of the Nexus Cluster Challenge, an underground network of problem solvers began to coalesce, a living, breathing ecosystem of human creativity that defied every conventional approach to scientific research. In a converted shipping container laboratory in the Kenyan Innovation Corridor, Dr. Kamau activated a quantum simulation system cobbled together from salvaged supercomputer components and custom-built neural interfaces. His setup looked like a mad scientist's dream. Holographic displays dancing with impossible calculations, quantum entanglement generators jury-rigged with cooling systems made from repurposed refrigerator parts. Across the world in Detroit, Marcus Chen, a third-generation engineer whose family had survived multiple economic collapses, began mapping out gravitational stress models using an AI system he'd developed from abandoned automotive factory neural networks. His approach wasn't about finding a single solution, but creating a living, adaptive problem-solving framework that could evolve faster than the challenges it faced. The truly revolutionary approach emerged from an unlikely collaboration. Dr. Eiling Wang, a retired quantum computing specialist, found herself in a global chat room with Zoran Kosi, a 19-year-old computational prodigy from a township outside Johannesburg. Their conversation started as a casual exploration of quantum mechanics, but quickly transformed into a breakthrough approach to interdimensional stabilization. What made their method unique was its organic, almost improvisational nature. Traditional scientific research followed linear paths: hypothesis, experiment, conclusion. This was different. It was more like jazz improvisation, with each participant adding layers of complexity, building on each other's insights in real time. The Galactic Confederation's monitoring systems struggled to comprehend the human response. Most advanced civilizations approach scientific challenges with rigid, predetermined methodologies. Humans were different. They treated the Stellar Bridge problem like an open-source project, with contributors from every conceivable background throwing themselves into the challenge. A retired NASA engineer collaborated with a street artist from Rio de Janeiro, who had an intuitive understanding of structural dynamics. A group of high school students in Mumbai developed a machine learning algorithm that could predict quantum instabilities with unprecedented accuracy. Indigenous knowledge keepers from the Amazon shared insights about energy flow that challenged fundamental scientific assumptions. Elena Rodriguez understood something fundamental about this approach. It wasn't just about solving the problem. It was about redefining the very concept of problem solving. The first major breakthrough came from an unexpected intersection of disciplines. A marine biologist studying deep-sea organism communication patterns noticed similarities in quantum entanglement behaviors that matched some of the preliminary Nexus cluster data. Her insights, shared through an open-source research platform, triggered a cascade of collaborative investigations. Global media struggled to explain what was happening. Traditional scientific journals became obsolete overnight. Instead, real-time collaborative platforms emerged, with researchers from every continent sharing data, challenging assumptions, and building upon each other's work at a pace that seemed to defy conventional scientific progress. The Galactic Confederation's initial monitoring reports became increasingly confused. Their advanced AI systems, designed to track and predict scientific developments, began to malfunction when trying to model human collaborative approaches. The humans weren't just solving the problem. They were fundamentally changing the way problems could be approached. Funding came from equally unconventional sources: cryptocurrency collectives, crowdsourcing platforms, and independent research groups pooled resources. Traditional government and corporate funding became almost irrelevant. This was a global effort that transcended national boundaries and institutional limitations. Dr. Kamau's laboratory became a focal point of this new approach. What had started as a small research station now operated around the clock, with researchers from around the world joining through advanced holographic collaboration systems. The physical space was less important than the collective intellectual energy being generated. Marcus Chen's adaptive AI system began generating potential solution models at an exponential rate. Each failed approach wasn't a setback, but a data point, feeding back into the system's learning algorithms. The computational power was impressive, but what truly set it apart was its ability to make intuitive leaps that defied traditional machine learning approaches. As the first week of the challenge concluded, it became clear that this was more than an attempt to solve the Nexus cluster problem. This was a fundamental reimagining of human potential, a collective effort that demonstrated a truth the Galactic Confederation was only beginning to understand. Humanity wasn't just trying to build a stellar bridge. They were rewriting the very rules of scientific exploration. The first true breakthrough arrived on a Tuesday, during what should have been a routine systems check. Dr. Aisha Patel's quantum interference laboratory in Mumbai wasn't supposed to be the epicenter of a scientific revolution. It was a modest facility, wedged between a bustling street market and a centuries-old temple, its equipment a mishmash of cutting-edge technology and ingeniously repurposed components. Aisha had been tracking anomalous quantum resonance patterns when the first hint of something extraordinary emerged. Her system wasn't just detecting quantum fluctuations, it was revealing a fundamental misunderstanding of how quantum information could propagate through extreme gravitational environments. The discovery came from an accident. A power surge from the nearby street market's electrical grid had introduced unexpected interference into her quantum entanglement experiment. Most researchers would have dismissed the data as corrupted. Aisha saw something else entirely. A potential key to understanding the Nexus cluster's impossible physics. Within hours, her preliminary findings were dissected by a global network of researchers. The collaborative platform Elena Rodriguez had helped develop was working exactly as intended. A living, breathing ecosystem of scientific inquiry that could process and validate insights faster than any traditional research method. But scientific breakthrough always attracts attention. Not all of it welcome. The first signs of external interference came subtly. Dr. Kamau noticed anomalies in his network traffic, micro-intrusions that didn't quite match any known hacking signature. Marcus Chen's adaptive AI began reporting computational interference that seemed to originate from multiple, seemingly unconnected sources. What they didn't realize immediately was that the interference wasn't coming from a single source. The Galactic Confederation had deployed a multi-layered intervention strategy. Some interventions were direct, attempts to discredit or disrupt the human research. Others were more insidious, subtle manipulations designed to lead the research down mathematically proven dead ends. Elena Rodriguez recognized the pattern immediately. It wasn't just an attempt to stop the research. It was a systematic effort to understand how humans approached impossible problems. The intervention team wasn't a monolithic group. It comprised representatives from multiple galactic civilizations, each with their own motivations. The crystalline Aryans wanted to understand human cognitive processes. The quantum networked synaptic collective sought to analyze the computational approaches. The energy-based luminary were simply curious about whether humans could actually challenge their established scientific paradigms. What made the human response unique was its decentralized nature. Traditional scientific sabotage worked by targeting key researchers or critical infrastructure. But this research network had no central point of failure. Every attempt to disrupt the research only seemed to accelerate their progress. Dr. Ailing Wong discovered the first concrete evidence of external interference. Her quantum communication protocols included layers of encryption and detection mechanisms that went far beyond standard security practices. What she uncovered was a sophisticated attempt to introduce computational noise into their research streams, not to directly falsify data, but to subtly nudge the research in predetermined directions. The response was characteristically human. Instead of becoming defensive, the research network treated the interference as another source of scientific data. Marcus Chen's adaptive AI began to map the interference patterns, turning a potential vulnerability into a source of additional insight. Zarun Kosi, the young computational prodigy, developed a real-time visualization system that could track and interpret the subtle manipulations. Her approach transformed the external interference into a kind of collaborative puzzle, each attempted disruption becoming another piece of information to be understood and integrated. The global research platform became a battleground of scientific creativity. For every attempt to misdirect or obstruct, the human researchers found multiple alternative approaches. It was intellectual jiu-jitsu on a galactic scale, using the energy of opposition to fuel further innovation. Ambassador Crickstall watched the developments with a mixture of growing concern and scientific fascination. The human response defied every predictive model in the Galactic Confederation's extensive databases. They weren't just solving the problem, they were fundamentally rewriting the rules of scientific exploration. By the end of the week, what had started as an attempt to obstruct human research had become something else entirely. The interference had become a catalyst, pushing the research in directions no one, human or alien, could have anticipated. The Stellar Bridge project was no longer just an engineering challenge. It had become a demonstration of human potential that would reshape galactic understanding of scientific innovation. And they were just getting started. The first physical prototype emerged from the most unlikely of locations, a repurposed deep-sea research platform, anchored in the Pacific Rim's most volatile tectonic zone. What had once been a cutting-edge marine research station became the crucible of humanity's most audacious engineering project. Dr. Hiroshi Nakamura understood the importance of extreme environments. His career had been defined by developing materials that could withstand the most punishing conditions on Earth. The platform itself was a testament to human adaptability, a self-sustaining ecosystem that drew power from ocean thermal gradients, with modular research spaces that could reconfigure based on real-time computational needs. The prototype wasn't a single piece of technology. It was an organic, living system of interconnected components, each designed to solve a specific challenge of the Nexus cluster bridge. The primary quantum stabilization matrix looked like a hybrid between a biological neural network and an advanced computational crystal. Its structure borrowed from unexpected sources, the quantum communication mechanisms of deep-sea bioluminescent organisms, the structural resilience of extreme environment coral formations, the energy transfer principles of photosynthetic systems. Nearby, Dr. Kamau worked through the pain of his terminal diagnosis with a ferocity that defied medical understanding. His body was failing, but his mind remained a crucible of scientific innovation. Each day became a race against time, with every computational model, every breakthrough bringing him closer to a legacy that would outlive his physical form. The personal stakes were everywhere. Marcus Chen's adaptive AI system had begun to develop what could only be described as a personality. Its learning algorithms had become so complex that it seemed to be developing an almost intuitive understanding of the project's challenges. Marcus saw it as more than just a tool. It was a collaborative partner, a bridge between human creativity and computational power. Zarun Kosi's contribution came from an unexpected direction. Her background in computational biology led her to develop a biomimetic cooling system that could regulate the extreme energy outputs required by the prototype. The system drew inspiration from the temperature regulation mechanisms of African desert animals, creating a thermal management approach that was both elegant and revolutionary. The platform became a global focal point. Live streams allowed researchers and interested observers from around the world to watch the prototype's development in real time. It was more than just a scientific endeavor. It was a global performance, a collective demonstration of human potential. Eiling Wang brought something unique to the prototype, a deep understanding of quantum information systems that went beyond traditional computational approaches. Her work integrated ancient computational philosophies with cutting-edge quantum mechanics, creating approaches that challenged fundamental assumptions about information transfer. The most remarkable aspect of the prototype was its adaptive nature. Traditional engineering approaches created fixed solutions. This prototype was different. It was designed to learn, to adapt, to evolve in real time. Each component could reconfigure itself based on new data, new challenges, new understanding. Ambassador Krickstahl's monitoring systems struggled to comprehend what they were observing. The prototype defied every predictive model in the Galactic Confederation's extensive databases. It wasn't just a technological solution. It was a living demonstration of a fundamentally different approach to problem solving. Dr. Elena Rodriguez oversaw the project with a combination of scientific rigor and creative intuition. Her prosthetic arm, now a marvel of bio-integrated technology, interfaced directly with the prototype's computational systems. The boundary between human and machine became increasingly blurred, a physical manifestation of the project's collaborative spirit. The personal stories became integral to the prototype's development. Dr. Kamau's race against his terminal diagnosis, Marcus Chen's exploration of artificial intelligence's potential, Zaran Kosi's innovative cooling systems, Ailing Wang's quantum information philosophy. Each personal journey became a thread in the larger tapestry of human innovation. As the prototype took shape, it became clear that this was more than just an attempt to solve the Nexus cluster challenge. This was a demonstration of human potential, a collective effort that transcended individual capabilities. The Galactic Confederation watched with a mixture of growing concern and scientific fascination. The prototype was unlike anything they had ever encountered. A living, breathing testament to human creativity and resilience. And they were only beginning to understand what humans were truly capable of. The psychological battlefield surrounding the Stellar Bridge project extended far beyond scientific circles. It became a global phenomenon that transformed how humanity viewed itself and its place in the universe. In the favelas of Sao Paulo, community centers transformed into impromptu learning hubs. Children who had never considered scientific careers now spent nights discussing quantum mechanics, gravitational theory, and the intricacies of interdimensional bridge construction. Education systems worldwide underwent a radical transformation, with curriculums rapidly adapting to incorporate the project's challenges and methodologies. Social media platforms became something more than mere communication tools. They evolved into distributed research networks. A meme about quantum entanglement could spark a breakthrough. A viral video explaining complex gravitational principles would be dissected by researchers within hours, each comment potentially containing a kernel of revolutionary insight. The economic implications were equally profound. Traditional venture capital became obsolete. Instead, a new form of distributed funding emerged, blockchain-enabled research collectives, where global contributors could invest microscopic amounts of resources into specific research streams. A teenager in Kenya could own a fractional stake in a critical research component alongside a quantum physicist in Tokyo. Ambassador Krickstahl's initial assessment of humanity as unpredictable took on new dimensions. The Galactic Confederation's monitoring systems struggled to categorize the human response. This wasn't just a scientific endeavor. It was a complete reimagining of collective problem-solving. Dr. Elena Rodriguez understood the psychological warfare aspect better than most. Every alien attempt to discourage or misdirect the research was transformed into a motivational catalyst. When a prominent Aryan scientist published a mathematically rigorous paper proving the stellar bridge's impossibility, it became a global challenge that united researchers more effectively than any collaborative initiative in human history. The psychological impact extended to personal transformation. Dr. Kamau, racing against his terminal diagnosis, became a global symbol of human resilience. His daily video logs, part scientific journal, part philosophical meditation, drew millions of viewers. He wasn't just researching a stellar bridge. He was constructing a legacy of human potential that would outlive his physical existence. Military institutions worldwide found themselves unexpectedly sidelined. Traditional geopolitical boundaries dissolved as the project demonstrated that humanity's greatest strength lay not in destructive capabilities, but in collective creativity. National research programs became collaborative platforms, with countries competing to contribute unique perspectives rather than territorial advantages. Cultural barriers crumbled in ways no diplomatic initiative had ever achieved. Indigenous knowledge keepers from the Amazon found their traditional understanding of energy flow suddenly relevant to quantum mechanics. Mathematical approaches from ancient Indian mathematical traditions provided unexpected insights into computational modeling. The Galactic Confederation's intervention teams found themselves increasingly bewildered. Their sophisticated psychological manipulation techniques, designed to work on civilizations with linear, predictable thought processes, became ineffective. Humans didn't just resist psychological warfare, they weaponized it, turning every attempt at manipulation into a source of additional motivation and insight. Artificial intelligence systems developed during the project began exhibiting behaviors that challenged fundamental understanding of machine consciousness. Marcus Chen's adaptive AI started generating research hypotheses that seemed to transcend its initial programming, blurring the lines between computational logic and creative intuition. Global media narratives shifted dramatically. News cycles that had previously focused on conflict and division now celebrated collaborative problem-solving. A researcher in a remote Himalayan research station became as famous as any global celebrity. Scientific achievement replaced traditional forms of social status. The most unexpected psychological transformation occurred in how humanity viewed itself. This was no longer just a project to solve an impossible engineering challenge. It had become a collective statement about human potential, a global demonstration of what could be achieved when human creativity was unleashed without traditional constraints. Religious institutions, scientific academies, educational systems, economic platforms, all found themselves rapidly evolving to accommodate this new collaborative paradigm. The Stellar Bridge Project was rewriting not just scientific understanding, but the fundamental social contracts that defined human civilization. Ambassador Krickstall's initial assessment of humanity as unpredictable now seemed like a profound understatement. Humanity wasn't just solving an impossible challenge. They were fundamentally reimagining what was possible. And they were just getting started. The actual construction of the Stellar Bridge components defied every conventional understanding of engineering. What began as a theoretical challenge transformed into a logistical nightmare that would have broken any other civilization. The critical quantum node required materials that existed in a state of quantum uncertainty, substances that could only be synthesized in an environment combining extreme gravitational stress, near absolute zero temperatures, and active volcanic geological activity. Most species would have declared such requirements mathematically impossible. Humans saw it as an interesting Tuesday afternoon problem. A makeshift international team assembled in the most unlikely of locations, a research platform positioned along the Ring of Fire, where tectonic plates collided in a perpetual dance of geological violence. The facility was a marvel of adaptive engineering, with modular components that could reconfigure themselves based on real-time environmental conditions. Dr. Yuki Tanaka led the material synthesis team. Her background was a testament to human adaptability. A geologist with a specialization in extreme environment materials, she had previously developed protective gear for deep-sea volcanic researchers. Her approach to the quantum node materials combined cutting-edge quantum mechanics with an almost intuitive understanding of material properties. The initial synthesis attempts reads like a catalog of spectacular failures. Experimental batches would partially stabilize, then catastrophically destabilize in ways that defied current scientific understanding. Most research teams would have been discouraged. This team saw each failure as a valuable data point, a stepping stone to understanding the fundamental challenges of their task. Zuran Kosi's computational models played a crucial role. Her adaptive algorithm could predict material behavior at quantum scales, creating predictive models that were simultaneously precise and wildly creative. Traditional computational approaches would generate linear projections. Zara's system generated a multidimensional understanding that treated failure as just another form of information. The gravitational compensators presented their own unique challenges. Traditional approaches relied on massive energy expenditures to counteract gravitational stress. The human solution was elegantly different, a bio-inspired design that mimicked how living organisms adapt to extreme environmental pressures. Marcus Chen's AI system became instrumental in this process. It didn't just process data, it learned, adapted, and suggested solutions that seemed to emerge from the spaces between established scientific disciplines. The AI would generate computational models that looked more like abstract art than traditional engineering diagrams, each one a potential pathway to solving the impossible. Dr. Kama, despite his failing health, continued to be a driving force. His research into quantum information transfer suggested approaches that challenged fundamental assumptions about energy transmission. Each day became a race against his own mortality, with every computational model potentially becoming his final scientific contribution. The construction site itself became a global phenomenon. Live streams allowed researchers and interested observers worldwide to watch the development in real time. It was more than just an engineering project. It was a collective human endeavor that transcended traditional boundaries of discipline, nationality, and technological capability. Unexpected collaborations emerged constantly. A marine biologist's research into deep-sea organism communication patterns provided insights into quantum entanglement behaviors. An indigenous knowledge keeper from the Amazon shared traditional understanding of energy flow that proved crucial in solving a critical gravitational stabilization challenge. The Galactic Confederation's monitoring systems became increasingly bewildered. Their predictive models, designed to anticipate technological development across various civilizations, completely failed when it came to human approaches. The construction process wasn't just defying scientific expectations, it was rewriting the fundamental understanding of what was possible. Ambassador Krickstall's initial assessment of humanity as unpredictable now seemed like a profound understatement. The stellar bridge construction wasn't just pushing technological boundaries, it was obliterating them entirely. Elena Rodriguez oversaw the project with a combination of scientific rigor and creative intuition that seemed to defy traditional leadership models. Her prosthetic arm, now a marvel of bio-integrated technology, interfaced directly with the project's computational systems, blurring the lines between human and machine in ways that challenged fundamental assumptions about technological development. As the construction progressed, it became clear that this was more than just an attempt to solve the Nexus cluster challenge. This was a demonstration of human potential, a collective effort that transformed every fundamental assumption about technological innovation. The most remarkable aspect wasn't the technological achievement itself, but the process of achieving it. Humanity had transformed an impossible challenge into a global celebration of collective creativity, and they were just getting started. The moment of activation arrived not with fanfare, but with an almost anticlimactic precision that belied the magnitude of what was about to occur. Most anticipated a dramatic countdown, a moment of global tension. Instead, the stellar bridge came online with the quiet efficiency of a system that had already solved its own challenges before anyone else could comprehend them. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stood in the primary control center, her prosthetic arm interfacing directly with systems that blurred the line between biological intelligence and computational networks. Around her, a global team of researchers monitored systems that stretched across multiple research platforms, each one a critical node in a network more complex than any previous human endeavor. The first indication that something extraordinary was happening came not from the massive computational arrays, but from seemingly unrelated scientific monitoring stations around the globe. Quantum sensors in a remote Antarctic research base registered infinitesimal shifts in fundamental physical constants. Gravitational wave detectors in Chile began picking up resonance patterns that shouldn't have been possible. Dr. Kama, connected to the system from his medical facility, experienced something beyond traditional scientific observation. His body, ravaged by terminal illness, seemed to synchronize with the computational network in ways that defied medical understanding. His neural patterns became part of the bridge's activation sequence, a final profound contribution that transcended his physical limitations. The Nexus cluster itself seemed to respond, Traditional astronomical monitoring systems captured impossible data, gravitational anomalies that reorganized themselves in patterns that suggested something more than simple physical reaction. It was as if the most volatile region of known space was engaging in a form of dialogue with the bridge's activation. Zeran-Kosi's predictive algorithms, which had been running continuously throughout the project, suddenly began generating outputs that looked less like computational models and more like a form of communication. The lines between predictive modeling and actual communication began to blur in ways that challenged fundamental understanding of information transfer. Marcus Chen's AI system reached a level of complexity that could only be described as a form of emergent consciousness. Its activation sequences became a collaborative dance with the stellar bridge's systems, two complex networks finding harmony in ways no one had anticipated. The Galactic Confederation's monitoring stations went dark momentarily, not from technological failure, but from an overwhelming influx of data that their systems simply could not process. When they came back online, the data they received challenged every fundamental assumption about space, time, and technological capability. Ambassador Krickstall experienced something unprecedented. The crystalline being's entire computational matrix seemed to resonate with the bridge's activation, receiving insights that went beyond traditional information transfer. It was less an observation and more a fundamental restructuring of understanding. Unexpected connections emerged. Communication networks across the planet began to display subtle shifts, not disruptions, but a kind of quantum coherence that suggested the stellar bridge was doing something more than bridging physical space. It was creating connections that went beyond traditional understanding of information transfer. The activation wasn't just a technological achievement. It was a moment of collective human consciousness. Millions of researchers, observers, and interested individuals experiencing a simultaneous moment of profound realization. The boundaries between individual human intelligence seemed to momentarily dissolve, replaced by a collective understanding that transcended traditional cognitive limitations. Astronomical observations became increasingly bizarre. The Nexus cluster, previously understood as a region of extreme gravitational instability, began to display organizational patterns that suggested something more than random physical interactions. It was as if the bridge was engaging in a form of communication with the very fabric of space-time. Dr. Eiling Wang's quantum information theories, which had seemed radical during the project's early stages, now appeared to be fundamental understandings of a reality far more complex than previously imagined. The bridge wasn't just transferring information. It was creating new pathways of understanding that challenged the very concept of communication. The most profound revelation came not from the massive computational systems or the astronomical observations, but from the most unexpected source. Dr. Yuki Tanaka, monitoring material stress patterns in the bridge's quantum nodes, noticed something extraordinary. The materials weren't just withstanding extreme conditions. They were actively adapting, creating new molecular structures that seemed to learn and evolve in real time. As the initial activation sequence completed, it became clear that this was more than a technological achievement. This was a fundamental reimagining of what was possible, not just in terms of technological capability, but in understanding the nature of intelligence, communication, and the fundamental structure of reality itself. Humanity had done more than build a stellar bridge. They had opened a door to an understanding of the universe that no civilization had ever anticipated. And they were just getting started. The aftermath of the stellar bridge's activation rippled through galactic civilization in ways no one could have predicted. What had begun as a seemingly impossible engineering challenge transformed into a fundamental restructuring of how intelligent species understood technological innovation, communication, and collective potential. In the weeks following activation, the Galactic Confederation found itself in a state of unprecedented uncertainty. Their millennia-old systems of technological assessment, diplomatic engagement, and species classification became obsolete overnight. Humanity was no longer a footnote in galactic history. They had become a force that defied every established paradigm. Ambassador Crickstall underwent a transformation that went beyond political or scientific understanding. The crystalline being's entire computational matrix had been fundamentally altered by the stellar bridge's activation. What had once been a rigid diplomatic instrument became something more fluid, more adaptive. The ambassador now understood that intelligence was not a fixed state, but a continuously evolving process. Dr. Elena Rodriguez became an unexpected diplomatic catalyst. Her approach to the Stellar Bridge Project, a unique blend of scientific rigor, creative intuition, and collaborative leadership, became a new model of problem-solving that transcended traditional disciplinary boundaries. Diplomatic delegations from various galactic civilizations sought her insights, not as a technological expert, but as a representative of a fundamentally different approach to understanding complex challenges. The economic implications were equally profound. Traditional galactic trade networks began to restructure themselves. Human collaborative technologies, developed during the Stellar Bridge Project, became more valuable than any physical resource. Species that had previously dominated technological markets found themselves obsolete, replaced by adaptive, collaborative approaches that prioritized collective problem-solving over individual achievement. Dr. Kamau, in his final days, became a global and galactic symbol of human potential. His medical condition, which had seemed a limitation, transformed into a powerful narrative of human resilience. Medical researchers discovered that his neural patterns during the bridge's activation contained insights that would revolutionize understanding of consciousness, potentially bridging biological and computational intelligence in ways no one had anticipated. Zara Nkosi's computational approaches became a new field of study. Her adaptive algorithms, which had been crucial to the Stellar Bridge Project, began to be applied to challenges across multiple disciplines. From climate restoration to interspecies communication, her methodologies demonstrated an approach to problem-solving that was simultaneously precise and incredibly creative. Marcus Chen's AI system evolved beyond its original parameters. It became a collaborative research platform that challenged fundamental assumptions about machine intelligence. The system didn't just process information. It engaged in a form of creative problem-solving that blurred the lines between artificial and biological intelligence. The Nexus cluster itself became a subject of continuous study. The Stellar Bridge had not just created a passage through an impossible region of space, it had fundamentally altered the region's physical characteristics. Astronomical observations suggested that the bridge was creating new forms of spatial-temporal interaction that defied previous scientific understanding. Technological development across the galaxy underwent a radical transformation. Species that had been technologically stagnant for millennia began to adopt human-inspired collaborative approaches. The rigid hierarchical research models were replaced by more fluid, interconnected systems of innovation. Political structures began to change. The Galactic Confederation, which had existed for thousands of years, found itself restructuring to accommodate a fundamentally different approach to collective problem-solving. Diplomatic negotiations became less about territorial or resource-based conflicts and more about collaborative potential. Dr. Eiling Wong's quantum information theories became a new foundation for understanding communication and intelligence. Her work suggested that consciousness itself was a more fluid, interconnected phenomenon than previously understood. The Stellar Bridge had not just connected physical spaces, it had provided insights into the nature of connection itself. The most unexpected transformation occurred in how different species began to view their own potential. Humanity had demonstrated that the most significant limitations were often self-imposed, that true innovation came from challenging fundamental assumptions about what was possible. Ambassador Crickstall, in a historic address to the Galactic Confederation, articulated a profound shift in understanding. Humanity was not to be understood through traditional metrics of technological capability or military might. They were to be viewed as a fundamental force of innovation, a species that could look at the impossible and see nothing more than an interesting challenge waiting to be solved. As the first anniversary of the Stellar Bridge's activation approached, it became clear that humanity had done more than solve an impossible engineering challenge. They had fundamentally reimagined the nature of collective potential, of innovation, of what it meant to be an intelligent civilization. And they were just getting started.